From crisis to clarity, from struggle to strength, this is Building Heroes, the new podumentary from the nation's leading interventionist, coach, and also the best-selling author of You're Not God, That Job Is Taken, Scott H. Silverman. With decades of hands-on experience in recovery, addiction treatment, and crisis intervention, Scott has helped thousands rebuild their lives. In this series, we dive into survivors, helpers, and everyday people stepping up when the odds are stacked, including the man of the hour, Mr. Scott H. Silverman. And we have him here with us, of course. Scott, welcome to your show. How are you today?
I'm great, SW. It's really nice to be here, and I'm honored to have a chance to answer your hard, tough questions, and maybe will help save a life.
I sure hope so. Well, we've got a lot of ground to cover here, as you know, so the best place to start is at the beginning. You've gone from personal addiction to being honored as a CNN hero. What was the moment that changed everything when you realized your story could save others?
That's a tough question because there's a series of things that took place. But I think the most important piece that most people over the years have wanted to hear is when I crashed and burned personally, starting my life over at 30, that was the pivot point. That was when I realized everything I had been doing in my life, I was finding some way to hurt myself. And once that was realized that I got help, I was able to really pivot. I knew I wanted to spend time helping others.
Now, you often talk about failing forward. What's one failure that turned out to be your best teacher?
I decided that one day, I believe it was the 10th of November, 1984, that I wanted to end my own life. The only way that I was going to be able to move forward, and there was no path forward, I felt. So my life was about to end, and I attempted suicide. And fortunately, what happened was I didn't. And I had an intervention that happened with me, more of a divine intervention. And from that day forward, I had flown home, I had gotten some help, and tomorrow, the 13th of November, will be my 41st year of continuous sobriety.
That's wonderful. Well, congratulations in advance. That's a huge accomplishment. And it's a very opportune time for us to be recording this program. So you've built teams made up of former inmates, veterans, volunteers, and professionals. What's the common trait that you look for when deciding who gets a seat at the table?
3 of the hardest words to ever say out loud is, I need help. Once I hear that from somebody, or I feel someone is ready to share that out loud and I could help them maybe articulate that messaging, once I know they've made that statement out loud, then there's a green light to move forward. And that's a critical point because most people won't say that out loud and don't know how to do that. And that's part of the reason for my most recent book. If you don't know how, that's okay. But also know that yesterday can't be changed and tomorrow we can make some plans for.
What makes it so hard for people to say those 3 words, I need help?
A lot of it has to do with the stigma. A lot of it has to do with our own personal ego and false pride. And no one wants to admit that they're making a mistake. No one really wants to say out loud, I screwed up. No one really wants to tell somebody else they didn't know what they were doing or potentially not only harden themselves, but others around them. Right. So that's a very tough platform to sit on. And that's why we see a lot of people, they hurt themselves before they can.
So they hurt themselves before they can even get better.
All right.
Well, you've worked with, like I said, veterans, but also first responders, the formerly incarcerated. These are groups who don't often trust institutions. How do you earn that trust and keep them engaged in recovery?
I think trust is like any other emotion. You have to develop it. You can't just flip a switch. It takes time to develop that, and someone has to believe that they think you have their best interests at heart. And one of the things, my own lived experience, is I doubted people for a long time because how did I get to where I was if people around me saw it happening but didn't find a way to point it out to me until it was too late? So I have found that I don't assume anyone's going to trust me And it's up to me when I'm working with an individual and a family or a professional or an HR department or EAP at a corporation that they know that I can be trusted, but I have to demonstrate that first.
Very interesting. Now, you've said that leadership starts with listening. How has that belief shaped the way that you lead in high-stakes, emotionally charged environments?
I found with my own personal journey that when two people are talking, nobody is listening. And when somebody is listening and they're sincere about that, it's a great path to develop and earn trust. Simply because most people who are sitting and their hair is on fire, time for anybody, including themselves. And once the fire gets put out, if we can get it put out, knowing that someone's willing to listen. It isn't really a conscious statement out loud. It's an action that takes place, seen by the other person, who innately will feel like this person does want to listen to me. And you can call it manipulation, but I call it motivation.
Well, that makes sense. Now, you've been outspoken about the fentanyl epidemic and mental health crisis going on lately. What do you think America still misunderstands about addiction, and what needs to happen next?
Well, let me correct you. I haven't been outspoken. I have been a crazy person. I throw rocks through windows, shovel through doors, scream from rooftops, and have been willing to answer any question. And I tell my story. And I feel if I'm willing to reveal some of my worst days in my life and my experience with mood-altering substances, it might convince somebody else that not only is he telling the truth, but if he is this clear and public about it, maybe there's something there that they can latch onto. So my passion about speaking up, if you will, writing a book about it, and spending years to research it and 3 years to write it, that I wanted to make a book of information available to those who are interested. And when I first printed the book and I sent it out to 50 governors, I got 4 thank you notes, and I got 1 book sent back to me saying, we don't accept gifts. And there is not a zip code in this country right now that has not experienced somebody who has suffered from an overdose from fentanyl or other opioids. And it's a shame that we're not talking about it like we did with COVID, because we're still seeing north of 400 people die every single day from an overdose. And when you think about somebody who overdoses, it's not just the person who's expiring, it's part of the family and friends and cohorts and colleagues who are dying a little bit as well.
Right. That's very interesting what you said. We don't talk about it the way we do with COVID. In a sense, it almost comes back to that inability to say, I need help, but on a much greater scale. It's almost like the country is afraid to say, I need help.
And we're certainly in a time war. If you're not asking for help and you're not participating in the solution, odds are you're contributing to the chaos and some of the insanity that's going on. But I don't want to make this a political conversation as much as I want to make it for people to understand that you're not God.
Right.
And that's okay. That's why the book I've just released was written, is you are not God. That job is taken, and you don't have to sit in a position where you think you are. And it all applies to families who think that they want to try to be God so they can save their loved one. But they can't, and they shouldn't, and there's no reason to have to, with the resources that are out there today that we didn't have 10 or 15 years ago to help people.
And how does that philosophy guide your approach to helping families in crisis today?
The concept of the book pretty much came around from the fact that to your question before, is what does leadership really need to do? And I don't like to think I have all the answers. I have some. And I think the concept of the book was to draw attention to people who are in these authoritarian relationships with their constituency or leadership roles, where there's not a consequence for them if they don't do well.
Right.
There's no consequence for a political leader if the morbidity rate goes up, other than they may get voted out. But I call it the pinball concept, where you talk to a city council member, they tell you it's law enforcement tells you it's education in the schools, Parents tell you it's the leadership. The leadership goes back to, it's not me, it's the governor. The governor says, well, it's not me, it's the president. So the finger pointing is out of control. And I think the concept, again, behind the book, and one of the things I say on the back of it is, if you think you're God, this book may not be for you. So, as I start sending this out, to the president, some governors who've taken the position, some leaders, even people at health agencies, Kennedy, and publicly, he's in recovery, but some of the things that he's doing is counterintuitive to helping people get to the path of making critical change.
You've sat across from people in the worst moments of their lives. What's the first thing you say when someone tells you that they've given up?
Well, first thing I say is thank you. It's about time. And then I go forward with, now that you have come to this point, what is it you'd like to do next? And probably 95% of them don't have any idea, which is good, because that's an admission, a powerlessness, and that's also a free-flowing and freedom-flowing thought and feeling when you realize, I can't do this anymore on my own. If you and I were talking about diabetes, for example, no one questions that. Oh my God, you have diabetes, let's get you to the doctor. Well, they'll draw the blood, they'll do the testing. And guess what? We have an outcome here. You're going to need to be monitored. You're going to need your blood sugar levels checked throughout the day. You're going to need to take insulin. We really want to see you change your food intake. And you're going to need to do some exercising so we keep your blood flowing. And then you're going to need to be monitored on an ongoing basis. And this is going to be a lifetime commitment. It's not going to take a lot of time, but it's going to extend everything on your path that probably would have sunsetted had you not had the intervention. So when we look at the maladaptive behavior of addiction and substance abuse, that's not popular, taking that kind of position. Let's get you in, get some help. It's a disease of denial. It's a disease of the brain. And I'll give you an interesting data point that 15%, according to science, these are not my numbers, they can all be verified, 15% of the country has an active addiction issue that will erupt in the next 12 months. Of those 15%, only 10% will seek help. And of the 10% that seek help, if all they do is go into a 30-day, let's say, inpatient program, which is kind of most familiar to most people, because that's how most marketing people market. You got to come here for 30 days. If they do nothing else after that, there's a 95% chance they're going to relapse.
Jeez, that's discouraging.
Well, it is discouraging, but it is reality, and it's been like that for almost 50 years. And what people have to understand, and because unfortunately the treatment business, the business I'm in, is guided by benefits that are provided by insurance companies who use what they think to be, kind of a this is acceptable losses attitude. Because if the average person needs 1 to 4 years of ongoing support and you give them 30 days, think about how far away we are from getting to the true solution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, never thought about that before. After 4 decades in service, what do you want the next generation of leaders, especially those in recovery, to understand about what lasting change really looks like?
First, the admission that you have a problem. Second, that you're open as much as you can be with what you've got going on, to seek help, to listen, and to get some tools so you can do this mostly on your own, and episodically when you need other outside expertise, you're not unwilling to go seek it, because part of the secret sauce of staying alive is getting new and updated information. Just recently we heard that aspirin taken every day doesn't prevent heart attacks. And look how long the tobacco industry went on with how popular tobacco was and how important it is in your life and so on and so forth. And the fact that we haven't, been able to solve cancer after all these years with all the effort and the resources thrown at it. So it seems societally, we don't have strong ethical outcomes that we can point to or models that seem to work that we can replicate and do more of, which is why, I'm in the treatment business. I mean, 12 years ago, I wasn't planning on it, but I found that I think I could do better even if I create a 0.5% improvement in what we're doing. And what we have learned, what I have learned with my life experience is keeping people on the trail as long as possible so they can see their own personal ability to change and morphing, if you will, and then create that systemic change. There's a chance that they might relapse down the road when a catastrophic event comes up. But what we know today about addiction, it is a big part of the problem, but a bigger part of the problem is the underlying untreated trauma, the underlying behavioral health issues that also need to be treated. And you can't treat somebody for mental health issues if they're under the influence of something mood altering.
Well, first of all, thanks out there to everybody for joining us on Building Heroes. And if today's conversation moved you, hope you share it with someone who could use a little strength, hope, or clarity. And like Scott said at the beginning of the hour, if we saved a life by doing this show, I think we're certainly on the right track. It's very discouraging given some of these statistics, but in another way, it's encouraging because there's people like Scott Silverman out there making a difference. But I just want to say that it's been an enlightening program, and I think that a lot of good will come from this. So, Scott, thank you for bringing your unique insights and experience to the table today.
Well, thank you for having me. And you mentioned the point that it could be discouraging, but the fact that someone like myself is out here putting it out there and talking about it and trying to be as honest and forthright as possible. And by the way, there are hundreds of people, if not thousands out there that want to help others, and they're probably in your community, but you're going to have to be the one that reaches out to them because they don't know who you are.
And even if we can't spot those out there that are struggling, we'll certainly have the tools required to keep an eye out. It's a fascinating industry, Scott, and the work that you're doing is really exemplary, second to none. And I just want to say that Building Heroes is slated as a one-off show, but if you like what you see, if you like what you hear, let Scott know at www.yourcrisiscoach.com. And who knows, maybe this show will at some point become a series. Until then, keep building, keep fighting, and keep showing up, because that's how heroes are made.